Hey, and welcome to Daddy Mojo. It's the podcast where we'll talk about parenting, all-age comic books, toys, and more. Now, here's your host, Trey Burley.
We're talking Oppenheimer. Now, I've wanted to see Oppenheimer for a long time. I was kind of surprised that you wanted to, but why did you want to see Oppenheimer? Typical 13-year-old youth.
Because I want to be like a nuclear scientist or engineer, like nuclear engineer or some sort, or, what better way to get started than with the man who did the Manhattan Project.
Okay. Before we saw Oppenheimer, now let's be clear, Oppenheimer is a rated R film. So some parents may not be comfortable taking their 13-year-old, even though they want to be an engineer. They may not be comfortable letting them see it.
It's a hard PG-13.
That's a very tactile way to say it. It's an R-rated movie. It is. There's no way this would be PG-13, even on some slippery sliding scale of craziness. What did you know about Oppenheimer, the man or the movie, before we saw this?
I know he was the man who split the atom and made the first atom bomb.
He was the father of the nuclear age, essentially, yeah.
Yes.
That's what he was. Now, the movie, were you surprised? This is a 3-hour movie. Were you surprised when I said that?
A little bit.
We've seen some long movies recently, like Indiana Jones, Mission Impossible. They were 2 hours and 40, 2:45. How did this rate in comparison to that in longevity? Did it feel longer or shorter? How did it feel?
It felt longer.
Okay. Now, why? I think I know why, but let's see. Why did it feel longer?
A lot of talking.
A lot of talking. Let's be clear. Oppenheimer, if you're a Christopher Nolan fan, it is Talkosaurus Rex. There's no action. There are no major set pieces because this is about the race to build the first atomic weapon. There's not much action. There's a nuclear explosion. That's all kind of CGI, and it's beautifully done. The entire movie is. But this is a dialogue-centered film. Did that fact surprise you?
A little bit, but not that much.
Okay. Now, neither of us got a snack or went to the bathroom during the movie. Was that because you had to go to the bathroom but waited, or you were really into the movie?
I kind of had to go to the bathroom, but I kind of wanted to wait, because I wanted to see what would happen.
I was the same way, and the Oppenheimer is basically divided up into 4 acts. The first act is kind of a look into his past, with acts 2 and 3 being the formation of his team in Los Alamos, act 3 being the creation of the bomb, and act 4 being what happened after the bomb, and the trials that happened to Oppenheimer from the Senate and other political ne'er-do-wells. And each act, I kind of had a different opinion on. The movie is great, and I stand by the original title. This is going to be one of the great cinematic feats of all time. Because of the way it's done, because of the way it's acted, because of the way it's edited, the score. Did you notice the score at all?
Not really. It wasn't that big.
That's because the score was in almost every scene. And it was so well done. In some cases, it was music that really punched you. In some cases, it just kind of hit dialogue. I loved it anyway. Yes. So I loved the movie. For me, it was bulletproof. It was awesome, and it weighed up to every platitude and every amount of praise that it's been mentioned to. But it's 3 hours long. But you're going into 8th grade. Do you think your 8th grade cohorts would like it?
I think they'd fall asleep for most of it, but some people might not. Some people may.
Yeah, and to your credit, you were not the youngest dude in the theater.
Nope.
There was one kid who was slightly younger, and that film might have been a little overpowering for who I think was a 6th grader.
Maybe.
A little too much for them because there was some nudity, and it's a long, serious movie. And did you count? I counted, so I'm not going to ask you to count, but how many characters were there in the film, in Oppenheimer?
A lot.
A lot.
I can't even count.
There were so many. About 24 characters of weight. And those are characters that are referenced by Oppenheimer or that play a major part in the movie. And what surprised me the most, when we were driving down to the theater, I asked you, I said, why do you want to see Oppenheimer? And you told me your answer at the get-go was because I want to be an engineer and I just wanted to see where it all came from. I thought it was because you wanted to see it because we've seen Batman so many times, or Batman Begins, the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy, and that you were a Christopher Nolan fan.
I had no idea who he was.
You didn't even know who he was. Have you seen Inception?
No.
You've seen Christopher Nolan films, but you didn't know they were Christopher Nolan films. And they were just the Batman films, but he's got a certain style. And you Nolan heads out there, you're going to appreciate this because of the way it was shot, especially if you see it in the 70 millimeter theaters that are out there. I think there are only like 90 in the United States. We didn't see it in that theater. We just saw it in a regular kind of 45 or whatever it is. I'm not a cinema head. I don't get that stuff. It's a little beyond me. I would like to have seen it. There's a theater about 25 miles away from us, but man, it's hot, and I didn't want to drive that far. But it's probably worth the drive. I've heard of people driving hundreds of miles to see it. It is. So do you think Mom would have liked that film, Oppenheimer?
Probably. Maybe. Maybe.
There were some parts that she would have loved. The dialogue, I told her after we got home, that the dialogue was very West Wing-ish. The dialogue is snappy. The editing in this movie, you really pay attention to the editing because it's a well-made, well-crafted film, but the dialogue is so sharp, and the acting is great. It really is one of the great films that you'll remember where you were when you saw it, and it was with me. Just have fond memories of that, okay? So out of stars, let's do the cliche star routine there. Okay. Typical 13-year-old youth. How many stars would you give Oppenheimer? Say out of 10 stars, brother.
9.5.
9.5. I would go 9.5 or 10. It's a great film. There's very little to be found wrong with it other than a little haircut here and there because it's a long film. But it makes no bones about the serious nature of its material, or the fact that it's long, or the fact that it's very heavy. So Oppenheimer is great if you're in the mood for a non-fiction, and supposed to be very close to the source material, American Prometheus, which I'm kind of curious to read the book now, from 2005. Curious to read it. It supposedly sticks very close to the book. It's Oppenheimer, and it's one of the best films out there. That you'll see, but it is rated R, so you middle schoolers may want to stay away from it unless you want to be an engineer.
It'll be fine.
You'll be fine. Back in my day, we would sneak into R-rated films all the time.
Yeah, that's like back then.
Back then?
No.
We snuck into Rambo. God, have you ever seen Rambo?
No.
It's horrible. This dude has a knife. We need to watch Rambo, apparently.
That was great.
That was beautiful.
Thanks for listening to Daddy Mojo. Be sure to tune in next time. For more information on any of the things we talked about today, just check out the website, daddymojo.net, or hit us up at Daddy Mojo on social media.